Hi, I want to talk to you about things I'm learning about the Cold War, things that are surprising me, disappointing me, are just interesting to me, and I want to share them with you. You don't have to agree with my conclusions. You might even think some of my information is wrong. If you do, let me know so I can make sure I'm not believing the wrong thing. Um, so just start with, I wanted to let you know that I was looking through a Marxist internet archive for documents and papers on Marxism and what they think. I always try to find out what they're thinking, the great thinkers and writers and influencers of Marxism, communism, socialism, particularly in the United States, what they think. Now, just notice something, and you can look this up and find it yourself. Did you know that well, first off, Marxism is a religion where man is God, and I didn't really realize that until I began studying it. The whole thing of the dialectic from Hegel and Kant, the philosophers, um, it all devolves into religion. And Hegel, who was an influencer on Marx, there was the young Hegelians who were who influenced Marx, and Hegel is supposed to. I'm trying to read his some of his lectures, and Hegel's supposed to have said that his that God, there's God, and then that Christ is the government, is the state, um, and so wow. So anyway, Marx was influenced by Hegel. Marx, Marxist, the Communist Manifesto. Its first title, according to this Marxist Internet Archive, was the Communist Confession of Faith. Now, if that isn't a giveaway, nothing is. I mean, this is a religion, and it's in our schools, and it violates. I've heard one lecturer, James Lindsay, say that it violates the Establishment Clause. I mean, you can't preach your fundamental Baptist in the schools. You can't have a class on that. You can't have your Catholic priest in the public schools. But they're preaching this religion, this secular religion with man as God, and it's changing everything. It has changed everything. So I found that a lot of things that I believed and was thinking were actually influenced by Marxist writers before I was born. And I didn't know that. I just thought that this was good. That's what a lot of people think these things that Marxists are pushing, and they think that they're compassionate, they're good, they're the way it ought to be. And they don't realize what it's leading to, the kind of dictatorship it's leading to. And we'll talk about some of the horrible consequences in some of the countries around the world. But I did want to get specific here. I found a reference to a speech given in Chicago on November 10th, 1952, from an Admiral Ben Muriel. He was the wartime boss of the Navy's construction program, and he was then the chairman of the board of the Jones and Laughlin Steel Company. He said that since Marx enunciated his doctrine, and I quote, "We Americans have adopted in varying degrees practically his entire program." He then noted that the federal government owned like a quarter of all the land at that time within the continental limits of the United States. It was steadily increasing its holding. Uh, the federal income tax, he said at that time, was in complete accordance with the Communist Plan. I agree with that. And to, quote, wrest by degrees all capital from the bourgeoisie, which is anybody who's, that's considered an oppressor. As for the third plank of the Communist Manifesto, Admiral Muriel said that at that time, one of the DuPonts had recently died, left an estate of $75 million. 75% of that was paid in inheritance taxes. So um, the government was taking, it's a redistribution of wealth, taking money from the people and then taking the money itself. So that's part of one of Marxist planks. And in the last war, the World War II, the United States confiscated the property of American citizens who were Japanese, um, and they got very little, back after the war, according to some people. Our Federal Reserve System was exactly what Marx had in mind: government control of the economy. Um, Things like the Federal Communications Commission, Interstate Commerce Commission, all pointing toward federal loans and subsidies for highways, bridges, steamship lines, trunk lines, airlines, airports, government control, government involvement, government being able to blackmail and manipulate and extort factories and interest production owned by the government. Federal, state, local governments own 20, a quarter at that time in the early 50s, a quarter of all electric power generating capacity in the United States. So there was just so many things that our country was headed toward adopting Marxism as its operating policy. And so I found a lot of other quotes and stuff like that in the 50s of people talking about and how communism and the New Deal. You had Franklin Roosevelt who told Congressman Martin Dies that some of his best friends were communists. He also said to Martin Dies that he had never seen communism in practice, and yet he invited, and his wife invited known communists and Stalinist agents to the White House, and they were influenced by that. It just, he established diplomatic relations with the Soviet Union, and their leaders they were determined to overthrow constitutional government in the United States and replace it with a communist regime. So those are things that we need to keep in mind. And I'll stop there. I want to go on to some actual physical events that took place after World War II. I kind of got sidetracked on this because there's so many things that I'm telling you that I learned about that were just pretty shocking to me. So I won't dwell on the New Deal and stuff like that because that really goes before World War II. I'll just basically move on to events after World War II next. So anyway, please study the Cold War and keep in mind what's going on in this country. This is interesting. Okay, I'll say this recently. There was a big kerfluffle in Congress about something. I won't get into it. Don't want to talk about. But the Democratic Party, which has become controlled by the New Left, the Democratic Party, I heard they interviewed several Democratic congressmen and senators, and they were all saying exactly the same thing. And the thing they were saying was that free speech was bad, that it was wrong. You know how liberals used to always be about free speech and not being restricted? Well, these aren't liberals. These are Marxists. And now the Democratic Party is controlled by Marxists. And in Marxist thought, reading Herbert Marcuse, as I've said before, free speech is only allowed by the left, and only if they maintain the party line or not speaking reactionary. But the right has no right to free speech. So very interesting stuff to see all this stuff I'm looking at unfolding in our current politics. And you should be really concerned, because what happens when communists take over in every country that I've seen has been awful. I mean, just absolutely awful. So, we'll talk more about political and New Deal, and foreign relations, international events as I'm coming up here. This is kind of free flow. I'm just like seeing things and reading things. I'm just stunned. I'm hearing things, listening to lectures from left and right. Of course, if somebody who's conservative says something, I need them to back it up. I need to see where it came from. So that's one of the important things. So if somebody says something, I go, well, where's your information from, and how can I verify it? Because I don't want to say something that's, goofy. It does turn out not to be true. So anyway, thank you for listening. Please keep that stuff in mind. Talk to you next time.